Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the SITREP for the day of 564 to 565 for the 10th to the 11th of September. Let's start off with the Black Sea. In the Black Sea, there is report from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 10th of September that the Russian forces have launched an airstrike in the area of the Snake Island, and then we have on the 11th of September, the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine reported that they have captured the oil rigs within this area here on the western part of the Crimean Peninsula. So, Ryba, the pro-Russian source, mentioned that the Ukrainian forces landed on the platforms, take video, planted the flag, and then they left. They do not have physical control, at least that's what they claim, of these platforms. And in fact, they also think that these videos are not captured on the day of the announcement, but actually on previous days where we have the footages of Russians attacking the Ukrainian boats in this area here, while the Ukrainians were trying to land on NOVOJEHORIVKA. So that's the situation over there. We move on to the Zaporizhia front. At the Zaporizhia front, we have fighting reported in the north of Zerebianki in the Kayamsky sector. So this is reported by Surya Maps on the 11th of September. That's all we know. We do not know a lot about this. So basically, there is a heavy entrenchment by the Russians around here, and the Ukrainians were attacking in the north. That's all we know. So moving on from the Kayamsky sector, we go into the Orikhiv sector, which is here, Orikhiv. At the Orikhiv sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their assault at Robotine towards Novoprokopivka and towards Verbove. And fighting is being reported at Robotine by the Russian Defense Ministry from 10th, 11th, and 12th report. They did not mention exactly, it's in the south. They only write near. Then they say close to Robotine, so and in the area of, so really up to imagination of where the fighting is. and then we have the fighting from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reports of Russian counterattacking in the area of Robotine. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 11th of September declared that they were successful in the south and southeast of Robotine. This actually corroborates information coming from Surya Maps that the Ukrainian forces have some success when they are attacking in this area here. So this is the south of Robotine, southwest, southeast of Robotine. So it's a southeast, correct. And then we also have fighting reported northeast of Novoprokopivka, which is basically what Surya Maps have mapped. And Deep State UA mentioned the fighting is now on the outskirts of Novoprokopivka. So we have geolocation of Ukrainian forces by Z Archive in this area here, which signals that the Ukrainian forces have captured this stronghold over here. The one over here is still unclear. It still looks like it's probably under Russian control. But the Ukrainian forces did indeed have continued to attack, and the geolocations went from here to here. We have this new geolocation of Ukrainian tanks in this area here, signaling that the Ukrainian forces are indeed creeping towards Novoprokopivka. And there is one counterattack being reported by Ryba on the in the east of Robotine, suggesting that the Russians were attacking in this direction. So it is interesting that the Russians are just attacking eastward, east of Robotine, ignoring those just next to them. So probably, but I trust geolocation more. Geolocation is more likely to be correct. And there's the new geolocation by Z Archive on the 11th of September. They reported, and it shows that the Ukrainian forces were having firefights over here as well. So this one is today's. This is the latest one. And according to the report, I just wanted to show you, they say that they were fighting with machine guns, which means that the Russian forces is probably really close. And the reports here also shows tend to show that they are actually fighting very close to the Russian lines. So this, which means that the Russians are actually pretty close, and the Ukrainians are actually pivoting. They are holding this line and they're pivoting towards Novoprokopivka. That seems to be what is happening right now. And there is a fighting reported at Verbove, but this only happens on today's Russian Defense Ministry report. It was not reported on the 10th and the 11th, and I almost wanted to report that the Ukrainians have abandoned the attack towards Verbove, but it doesn't seem to be that case. I thought that they wanted to focus all on Novoprokopivka now. But with this report from the Russian Defense Ministry, it might suggest that maybe not yet. The Ukrainian forces have not yet fully abandoned it, the operation to capture Verbove. But it does look like this attack might not happen much longer, because they need to focus their effort to capture at least one settlement, which is this one. Attacking towards Verbove will just be a distraction, especially as fighting goes on. They continue to grind their forces down. They will going to have manpower issues, or at least moving troops down is going to be a trouble, a lot of problems, given that the Russians are really close by in this area here. They can have fire control, or have drones and artillery operating all over these places. So for the Ukrainians to actually travel all the way down, it's best that they focus on one option first, and then they can actually have their PR victory. So let's see how this goes. There is also clarification of frontline according to Deep State UA, showing that the Russians actually have more control around this area here. And however, Surya Maps report this as a Russian counterattack. Deep State UA emphasized that it is not. They say that this is false information that the Russians are advancing, which is not. So anyway, this is how it is. There is fighting reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 11th of September about fighting near NOVOJEHORIVKA, which suggests that the Russians are attacking in this direction. However, it's just take it with a pinch of salt. Maybe it's not, because Ukrainian Defense Ministry report is a bit hard to interpret sometimes, because they could be the one attacking. Then they actually projected it on the Russians. There is geolocations of Ukrainian forces in these two positions. They were spotted by drones, and it does also put into question whether the Ukrainians are this far away at the front line, or could they be only holding the line around the highway. So that could also be possible. So we shall continue to monitor the situation over at the Orikhiv sector, and we shall see how this goes. We move into the other front line is over at the Velika Novosilka sector. This is Velika Novosilka, and this is the sector. Oops. This is the Velika Novosilka sector, and this time around we'll probably include Novomaiorske and Novodonetsk, because the fighting here is related to the situation over at Velika Novosilka. And we go from Prione first. Previously, we reported that the Russian forces have actually taken advantage of the Ukrainian redeployment and attack northward. They previously went all the way up here. So what happened was that the Ukrainian forces actually counterattacked and managed to recapture some of the grounds. And we have some clarification of the front line. It looks something like this. Most of this area here is actually gray zone. These are all gray zone, and the Ukrainian forces actually have a more secure area here as they counterattack. Information of the Ukrainian counterattack come from the Russian Defense Ministry and Deep State UA, and the Russian Defense Ministry actually acknowledged basically the Ukrainian counterattack in the north of Prione. It was very specific. Ryba simply reported about the counterattack, and they seems to repeated the information on the 10th of September. Russian Defense Ministry on the 11th reported a Ukrainian attack on Prione, but it did not mention where exactly this attack was from. So maybe this was the one on the north, which was then clarified on the next day's report to be in the north. And the Russians also seems to be attacking towards Rivnopil. Probably very limited attack. This is only reported on the 10th of September. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported this attack. Ryba actually corroborated the information, saying that the soldiers from the 194th and 127th actually destroyed an electronic warfare station south of Rivnopil. So this is Rivnopil. So the Russian forces probably launched a raid, and then they destroy whatever they need to destroy, and then they withdraw back into their defense line. This most probably what happened. It's not a offensive action to capture ground. Over on the other side of the Velika Novoselka sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their main attack against Novodonetsk and Novomaiorske. Fighting reported at Novodonetsk from the 10th on the 10th. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry and Ryba. The next report was actually in the southwest on the 11th of September. However, Surya Maps information is not always timely, so this could refer to the same information on the 10th, and actually, which means that on the 11th and the 12th, basically today so far, we haven't seen any information about Ukrainians attacking Novodonetsk, which could mean that the last attack is on the 10th, and the Ukrainian forces have given up trying to capture Novodonetsk. We do have a geolocation of Ukrainian forces in this position, geolocated by Z Archive, the pro-Russian source, and showing Ukrainian truck, pickup truck with infantry getting destroyed by artillery. So it does shows that the Ukrainians may be holding positions. They are no longer attacking Novodonetsk. Over at the Novomaiorske region, this is where the Ukrainian forces, where they actually have this reinforcement and redeployed forces over at Zolota Neva and Prististivka, focusing their effort on. So all effort is now on Novomaiorske. After I mentioned that there is a crack in the armor, and we still have geolocation of Ukrainian forces within Novomaiorske. This is on the 10th, and on the 12th we have geolocation just outside. Where the Ukrainian forces are holding some positions around here, and then we also have other geolocation by Z Archive on the 11th in these two locations, where the Ukrainian forces are actually moving towards the town. So far, there is no indication to show that the Russians have retaken this part of the town just yet. But there is some signals that might be the case, given that the Russian Defense Ministry on today's report, they mentioned about artillery thwarting attempts by Ukrainian forces to cross the Shatanka River north of Novomaiorske. So the Ukrainian forces may be trying to cross in this area here, and then they got shelled by Russian forces. But this does not necessarily mean that the Ukrainians cannot just drive down the road into the town and continue to hold a position. So fighting is still being reported at Novomaiorske from the 10th to the 11th by Deep State UA, Ryba, as well by Russian Defense Ministry acknowledging it, as well as Ryba again on the 11th. So the situation currently is still that the Ukrainians are still trying to push in, and they are probably have some kind of foothold at this moment. And there is fighting being reported northwest of Novomaiorske. This is reported by Surya Maps on the 11th, saying that the Ukrainian forces actually attacked in this area here. Probably is trying to get some buffer zone around this area so that they can actually drive along the river safely towards Novomaiorske. But yeah, that's all we do know at this moment. So that's all from the Velika Novoselka sector. We move over into the Marinka region. We have fighting reported at Marinka on the 10th and the 11th, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And we also have reports of fighting over at the northeastern part of Novomaiorske. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry as well. We move on to the Avdiivka front. This is the Avdiivka front. At the Avdiivka front, we have continued fighting over at the Opitne region, where the Ukrainian forces have launched this surprise attack against the Russian forces. So far, Opitne has not fallen just yet. They still managed to hold the Ukrainian forces, but we do have Deep State UA writing quite a lot, talking about this successful action by their forces. And they say that they basically tell people not to spread false information, and saying that all these captures are in exchange by human lives. There's in reality someone's life is behind each position. So this success of Ukrainian operation is acknowledged by the head of the ADFK City Military Administration, Vitaly Barashbash. They say that they have success in the Opitne region, and in his opinion is quite significant. I would say it's pretty significant as well, and they now claim that they have managed to enter and take part of Opitne at this moment. Fighting is still ongoing at Opitne, and this is actually repeated by Myroshnikov, talking about the element of surprise to capture Opitne. And on the 11th, Surya Maps reported this advance, and Ryba also reported, finally, a pro-Russian source reported about Ukrainian forces attacking Opitne on the 11th. And the Russian Defense Ministry only reported fighting at the area near close to Vodian on the 10th. And we have, let me see, yeah, I think the information got lost, but anyway, so the fighting over here at Opitne is actually acknowledged by the Russian Defense Ministry. However, they did not mention Opitne. They actually mentioned west of Avdiivka. So west of Avdiivka is around here, which actually corroborates the previous information from the 6th and the 7th. They talk about Kimi, but yeah, they have not acknowledged that the fighting have reached Opitne just yet. Over at Zverne, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that the Russian forces attacked it on the 10th, and so not much to talk about over there. And the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also on the 10th and 11th reported that the Russians attacking Avdiivka districts without mentioning exactly where. The Russian Defense Ministry reported fighting at Avdiivka from the 11th and the 12th. You can see west of Avdiivka. So that was wrong information. I remembered wrongly. Yeah, I actually read it wrongly when I was reporting as well. So never mind. So it's fighting in the area of Avdiivka. They have not acknowledged Opitne just yet. And the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned the Ukrainians attacked Krasnohorivka on the 11th, and on the 12th, I believe this is on the 12th as well, on the 10th and the 11th. So this is by the Russian Defense Ministry reporting Ukrainians attack. There is not much information about this. There is some rumors about Russians attacking in this area here from a different Russian source, which is in my secondary readings, but they are not part of my mapping sources. We will continue to monitor if this is the case, and if this is the case, then maybe I will add them into a mapping source as well. I just haven't seen. I just didn't decide to put them in. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported the Russians attacking near Karami on the 10th and the 11th. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Karami is actually over here, and they say that the Russians are attacking in that direction. So, but given the experience that I have reporting these fronts, most of these attack is very small. They are all skirmishes, and except for this one towards Opitne, which is offensive, the rest are all pretty skirmishy. So that's all from the Avdiivka front. We move on to the next front line that is with action is over at the Bakhmut front. At the South Bakhmut, the Ukrainian forces continue their operation, and so the fighting is reported at Kodyomivka, with the Ukrainians continue their attack on reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 11th of September. There is a geolocation of Ukrainian forces at this position, which actually alters our front line to show that the Russians at most have this position, since the Ukrainians have already arrived on the western outskirts of Kodyomivka. The fighting, however, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 10th say that the Russians were counter-attacking, so that's all we know tentatively. Over at Avdiivka, although I mentioned based on Ryba's reports about Russians withdrawing from Avdiivka, Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, continue to report in their mapping as Avdiivka under Russian control. So we shall continue to see how when this goes. And fighting continues to be reported in the area of Avdiivka. Deep State UA and Ryba both reported on the 10th. On the 11th, let me see, on the 10th, yeah, correct, on the 10th, that the Ukrainian forces were attacking the Russian forces. On the 12th, in today's reports from the southern group, they mentioned that they repelled Ukrainian attacks in the western part of Avdiivka. So And then we do have geolocation of Russian forces on the eastern part of Andreevka by Dnipro OC in the pro-Ukrainian source. So the Russian forces are still here. They do have fire control around this area here. So the Ukrainian forces still have not entered the settlement just yet. They probably still are outside, thinking what to do. So that's what we know. So maybe my reports of the capture might be premature, but we shall continue to monitor and see how this goes. Over at Klishchiivka, we have Ukrainian forces geolocated at this position by Z Archive at this position, and this actually do corroborates the Russian front line that we currently have on our mapping. However, fighting continued to be reported in this area here. Deep State UA and Miroshnikov reported on the 10th. Surya Maps and Ryba reported on the 11th. And the latest mapping shows that the Ukrainian forces have moved this much, and this area here is gray zone with the Russians pretty much getting pushed out. But this is based on pro-Ukrainian sources, and we also have the Ukrainian Defense Ministry continue to report that the Russians are counterattacking over at Klishchiivka on the 10th and the 11th. We have Miroshnikov, the pro-Ukrainian source, reported Ukrainian success in the north of the village of Klishchiivka. However, that's very anecdotal. We do not have any information about this at all. Over at the northern flank, we have Russians doing some offensive near Berkiivka. So this Berkiivka and the Russian forces were attacking along the railway line out, and managed to capture some of these tree lines. And this actually corroborates somewhat with a geolocation of Ukrainian forces over at this position. So the Ukrainian forces are still here, then the Russians are actually pushing along the railway. So let's see how this goes, whether this will become anything more significant. And over at Orikovo-Vasilivka, we have Ukrainian forces geolocated at this position. That shows that the Ukrainian forces continue to hold Orikovo-Vasilivka. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry continued to report Russians attacking in the area of Orikovo-Vasilivka on the 10th and the 11th. And that's all for this area here. And that's all from the Bakhmut front. We move into the Siversk front. At the Siversk front, we have geolocation of Ukrainian forces at Fedorivka. In this location here, they got struck by, I believe, drones. Let me see, artillery or drones, something like this. So they were traveling down the road, and then they got struck by Russian forces. But that's all we know. The front line here is pretty stagnant. There is a lot of geolocation over at Spurny, and these geolocations are Russian shelling of Ukrainian positions. And given that the Ukrainians are geolocated in this position, this actually alters the front line and shows that the Russians had at some point in the previous weeks have withdrawn from Spurny after they finally captured the position. So currently it looks like it's mostly under Ukrainian control. I also want to highlight that the mapping over here have changed to show that there is actually a lot of these artillery marks, the shelling in this entire area. And you can see that despite the front lines at Spurny, shelling, all these holes of the shellings actually go all the way back to Ivano-Darivka. So that's something very interesting. We have nothing over at Bilohorivka. We now move into Crimea front. At the Crimea front, we have the Ukrainian forces counter-attacking or attacking within the Serbyansky forestry. This is a continuation of their Serbyansky offensive, and this time around there seems to be some progress. We have geolocation of the front line at this position. This actually eats into previous declared Russian lines around here. The Russians are supposedly around here, and the Ukrainian forces have retaken at least this part. They are at least not infiltrated to this part. And similarly, the Russians supposedly have this line here. The Ukrainian forces also were geolocated at this position over here. So this shows that the Ukrainian forces have managed to advance back. So it could be corroborating that the withdrawal of airborne forces from the Serbyansky forestry did indeed affect Russian operations. Maybe, maybe not. So the Ukrainian offensive is reported by Myroshnikov and then was corroborated by the Russian Defense Ministry Center Group of Forces about the Ukrainians attacking. And there is Ryba actually reported the Russians actually managed to dislodge Ukrainian forces on the 11th. So there is this conflicting information about Ukrainians attacking and Russians attacking. So let's see how this goes. There is fighting being reported south of Kuzmine, according to the Russian Defense Ministry in today's report. So which means the Ukrainian forces are also attacking in this direction. So it is a full frontal assault of sorts within the Serbranski forestry. Over at the Dibrova region, the Russian Defense Ministry on the 10th and 11th reported the Ukrainians were attacking. So you can see this Ukrainian offensive is pretty extensive, and fighting is also being reported at Torsky on the 12th of September, according to the Center Group of Forces. And that's all we know from the Ukraine front. We move on into the Sviatove front. At the Sviatove front, there is still fighting being reported north of NOVOJEHORIVKA on the 10th of September, according to Deep State UA. But that is the last report we have at NOVOJEHORIVKA, and basically the Russian offensive in this area here have ended, because we have no reports of fighting in this area here, and the last reported attack was on the 7th in this area on the 9th. So basically, I think around 7th or 8th of September, the Russian offensive around NOVOJEHORIVKA has been abandoned. So that's the end of the Russian offensive, which lasted not very long. Let me see, from the 2nd to the 8th, or maybe to the 8th, which means that that's 1 week. If 2nd to the 9th or to the 8th is around 1 week. So that actually corroborates DPA's hypothesis that the Russian forces only do 1 week offensives. Over at the at Berestove region, Novoselivske region, there is fighting being reported near Kuzmivka. Kuzmivka is actually here. So for the Ukrainians to attack near Kuzmivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry 10th of September report, might suggest that the Ukrainians were attacking from a flanking position rather than going through Novoselivske, because if they go through, that will be Novoselivske fighting. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that it is the Russians that is attacking in the Novoselivske region. So they both corroborate each other somehow, the information, just that they are reporting in a different location. Berestove was there's fighting reported at Berestove, according to the Russian Defense Ministry on the 12th of September, today's report by the Zapad group of forces. So the Ukrainian forces are attacking. At the moment, it looks pretty limited. We shall see how this goes. And we move on to the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, the Russian so-called offensive at Sinkivka has been abandoned again. So totally no reports of any kind at the Kupiansk. So that's all from the Kupiansk offensive. And that's it for the SITREP, or the situation report, for the day of 564 to 565 from the 10th to the 11th of September. So some conclusions. The Russians have again abandoned their Kupiansk offensive. The last report of fighting at Sinkivka is on the 9th. The same thing happens at the NOVOJEHORIVKA region. The last reported fighting is also on the 9th. Particularly for the one at NOVOJEHORIVKA, as I mentioned earlier in the SITREP, is from the 2nd to the 9th. And this corroborates our hypothesis that the Russians only do 1 week offensives. So after 1 week, this offensive has ended. They just consolidate whatever they capture, and that's it. So that's very interesting that we know it's really 1 week. Another interesting information is Serbranski forestry. The Ukrainians are making some headways as they continue to do this attack within the forest, with geolocation of Ukrainian forces deeper than the previous established Russian lines, which was around here. So the Ukrainian forces are actually breaking a bit into the gray zone, because most of this area is considered gray zone. So let's see how this goes. Another one is Sperne. The Russians disappeared from Sperne. I did a quick video on this. A lot of people don't want to watch it, but that's it. But that's what it is. You know, pro-Russian, pro-Ukraine, no, not pro-Ukraine, but news that is Ukrainian, more Ukrainian friendly, you know, doesn't really do well on DPA's channel, but that's how it is. So, you know, these three positions, the Ukrainian forces probably have most of spurning. So, we move on. In the north of Bakhmut, the Russians make some little push around Berkivka region, and not sure if they will continue to move out further. But given how the Russians operate, probably not. And we in the south, the Ukrainian lines have reached all the way here now, with this much area here is gray zone. So the Russian forces are probably going to be pushed out very, very soon if we were to believe the Ukrainian information. We do have geolocation of Ukrainian forces over this position, which means that the most reliable line currently is here, but the more plausible line is actually here, with the Ukrainian forces continuing their push within Klishchiivka. Once they manage to push the Russians out, I think we will see the Ukrainian Defense Ministry declaring some kind of victory over Klishchiivka very, very soon. We have Andriivka continue to be in the gray zone. Previously, I reported this as a Ukrainian capture. However, there's geolocation to show that the Russians are still on the outskirts, and as a result, the Ukrainians do not dare to enter to claim the town. So we shall continue to monitor this situation over at Andriivka. Fighting is still very fierce in this area here, and similarly, fighting is very fierce over at the Kudyumivka region. Other major news is Opitne. Fighting is still ongoing at Opitne, with the Ukrainian forces reportedly have entered some part of the village. They are attacking into Opitne tentatively. Ukrainian mapping shows this entire area as gray zone right now. So we shall see whether the Russians will actually hold a defense at Opitne against the Ukrainian onslaught in this area here. So another important news is the Ukrainians giving up on Novoprokopivka. The last attack was reported on the 10th, on the 11th. So Surya Maps information are not timely. So the last attack is probably on the 10th of September, and which means on the 11th there's no attack. Ukrainian forces might have given up on Novoprokopivka, focusing all their efforts on Novomaiorske. And we still, all the geolocations, the latest that we have seen, is over here, here, and here. So it's still within within the settlement, which means the Ukrainian forces are still attacking into Novomaiorske. But this is not a easy attack, because the Russian forces continue to drone strike or artillery strike Ukrainian forces while they are on the way there. So, and we do have the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned about using artillery to stop Ukrainian forces from crossing the Shetenka River north of Novomaiorske. So, yeah, so this foothold is going to be pretty fragile tentatively at this moment. But the Ukrainian forces indeed have gathered a huge force, and if they are going to put all of them towards Novomaiorske, maybe they're going to have this result eventually. Another important information is the Ukrainian forces counter-attacking in the north of Kryone, and are able to capture some of these grounds that the Russian counter-attack have managed to capture. So yeah, but it looks like it's going to be pretty much a dead space there. The final of this important front lines is at Orikhiv. The important thing to note about the fighting around Robotine, Novoprokopivka, and Verbove, this triangle, is that we do not have reports of fighting at Verbove on the 10th and the 11th, which means the Ukrainian forces were actually focusing all their effort on Novoprokopivka. From Robotine down south, and from the east of Robotine and in the northeastern part of Novoprokopivka, this is where the focus is. The Ukrainians seems to have given up on Verbove. this until in today's Russian Defense Ministry report, they mentioned about defending against Ukrainian forces in the area of Verbove. But we shall continue to monitor to see if this is the case, where the Ukrainian forces actually put all their attention now on Novoprokopivka. We do have certain geolocations that shows that the Russian forces are probably very, very close, much more tighter. The lines are much more tighter than previously believed to be, with the Ukrainian forces holding a very fragile front line, particularly around this area here. And the Russians are likely to overrun them, given the intensity of the geolocations that we are seeing of Ukrainian forces getting killed off around this area here. The Ukrainian forces focus tentatively seems to be like this. And with geolocation of Ukrainian forces at this position, do suggest that this entrenchment over here has been captured by the Ukrainian forces. The main one is still unclear, probably still under Russian control at this moment, but the Ukrainian forces will probably continue to push towards Novoprokopivka before the weather turns. But the weather still holding up. There are some rain in Donetsk being reported by Patrick Lancaster. I also look at the weather forecast. This week a bit wet here and there, but the next week will be full sunny days in Donetsk. So of course that is only Donetsk, may not be applicable to this area here, but we shall continue to see how the weather goes and how everything goes. And otherwise, the last of which is Ukrainians capturing oil rigs, which they probably not going to do much there. But yeah, it is a PR victory for the Ukrainians, no doubt. And that's it for the conclusions. Do press the like button, subscribe. If you want to watch the SITREP, the full SITREP, with all the detailed information about all the different frontline and actions throughout the past day or two, do become a YouTube member or become a patron on Patreon, Coffee, Locals, or Boosty, and you will have access to the full SITREP. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.